The blood wouldn't come off. Daniel Hayes stood in the hospital restroom under buzzing fluorescent lights, scrubbing his hands like they were soaked in gasoline. The water ran pink, circling the drain in thin ribbons. 3 hours ago, that blood had been inside Lauren Carter, a stranger, a pregnant woman just trying to get through TSA like everybody else. Now she was in surgery, her unborn child on the edge of life, and Daniel couldn't stop seeing it. How fast it had all gone to hell. Behind him, a soft sound broke the silence. A faint, painful whine. Daniel turned. His partner Bear, a broad-shouldered, battle-scarred German shepherd, lay curled on the cold linoleum floor, sides heaving, coat streaked with blood. Some of it Lauren's, most of it his. "Hey, buddy," Daniel knelt beside him, voice catching. Bear's amber eyes fluttered open, tired, fogged, but still locked on Daniel like always. Like he'd never doubted for a second that he'd done the right thing, even when it meant throwing himself between a screaming woman and a collapsing barrier the size of a Honda Civic. "All dogs go to heaven," Daniel whispered, the old line from his father clawing up from somewhere deep. "But the best ones take their time getting there." Bear's tail twitched faintly, but it was enough. Out in the hallway, the beeping of a heart monitor ticked like a time bomb. 2 lives, 1 unborn, 1 furred and faithful, both hanging by threads. They say moments like these come in slow motion. That's a damn lie. At Phoenix Sky Harbor, the morning had been chaos in a bottle. Delays, crying kids, a security breach on Concourse B. Daniel was working the K-9 unit solo. His partner called out with strep, the understaffed TSA team stretched to the limit. Bear was trained to detect explosives, but his gift had always gone deeper than that. He'd picked Lauren Carter out of 1,000 other faces in seconds. She was in line, pregnant, pale, sweating. Something in her gait, a hitch. Bear alerted hard, barking, circling, pushing her backward away from the line. The agents thought it was aggression. She thought he was attacking. She screamed. Then the barrier gave out. A metal utility cart being towed on the upper level crashed down through the glass railing. Daniel barely saw it. Just the glint of sunlight on chrome and Bear moving like lightning straight into Lauren's side, knocking her out of the way. The cart hit Bear full force. He didn't make a sound. Daniel remembered none of the chaos after that. Only the sirens, the blood, the ER techs yelling for space. And Bear, silent on the gurney beside the woman he'd just saved. Now, hours later, Bear was still fighting. A nurse appeared. Purple scrubs, bright red sneakers. She knelt next to Bear, hands gentle but efficient. "He's breathing shallow. Looks like internal bleeding. We need to scan for organ damage." Daniel's jaw tightened. He's a TSA K-9. "Doesn't matter," she said. "This dog needs emergency surgery." "Has he been hit by a vehicle?" "He saved a woman at the airport," Daniel said quietly. "Took the full hit." Her eyes softened. "He's not just your partner, is he?" "No, ma'am," Daniel swallowed hard. "He's family." The nurse nodded, then hesitated. "I'll call our vet surgical team. They do pro bono work sometimes, but just so you know, internal trauma surgery on a large dog like this, you're looking at $15,000, maybe more." It landed like a brick to the chest. Daniel reached instinctively for his wallet. $347 in cash, a maxed-out credit card, a checking account that was already sweating the mortgage due tomorrow. "How long does he have?" The nurse's voice dropped. "Without surgery, hours, maybe less." She walked off to make the call. Daniel dropped into a molded plastic chair beside Bear, heart pounding, hands shaking. His fingers brushed over the thick fur behind Bear's ears. The spot Caleb used to scratch. Caleb. That name hit harder than anything else. "I made a promise," Daniel whispered. And I'm not breaking it again. Friends, if this story is hitting something inside you, if you've ever had an animal show up in your life and save you in a way nobody else could, please consider subscribing to the channel. We tell true stories of courage, compassion, and the four-legged souls who remind us how to be better humans. Footsteps. Daniel looked up. A man in an expensive navy suit approached, carrying the weight of someone who just faced mortality head-on. Ryan Carter, Lauren's husband. "I'm sorry," Daniel said instinctively, standing. "She's still in surgery," Ryan replied. "But the doctors said, your dog might have saved both of them." Daniel nodded. He did. Took the hit that would have crushed her abdomen. Ryan crouched beside Bear. The German shepherd's eyes flicked to him, too tired to lift his head, but still watching. "This him?" Ryan asked. "Yeah, that's Bear." The silence held for a beat. "What's wrong with him?" Daniel told him. The trauma, the bleeding, the price tag. He hadn't meant to, but the exhaustion, grief wrapped in guilt, ripped away every barrier. Ryan didn't flinch. 15 grand? Could be more. Ryan stood up and pulled out a sleek black credit card. "Whatever it costs," he said. "I'll cover it." Daniel blinked. "What?" "He saved my wife and my child. Money is just paper. This is a life. You don't put a price on that." Daniel's pride surged. He'd never taken charity. Never wanted a handout. His dad used to say, "You stand on your own feet or not at all." But this wasn't about pride. It was about Bear. "I'll pay you back," Daniel said, voice cracking. "I'll get a second job." No," Ryan cut in. "No payment plans, no IOUs. Call it karma or grace or the universe making things right, but this one's on me." The vet arrived 15 minutes later. A tall woman named Dr. Keller with calloused hands and kind eyes. Bear barely stirred as they lifted him onto the stretcher. Daniel knelt beside him, eyes locked to those fading amber orbs. "You hang on. You hear me?" Daniel whispered. "We've still got work to do. You and me." Bear's tail gave a slow, heavy thump. As the team wheeled him down the corridor, Daniel heard Ryan on the phone behind him. "I need to authorize a wire transfer." "Yes, right now. A TSA K9 saved my wife's life. I'm making sure he survives, too." Daniel turned back to the empty hallway. The last echoes of the stretcher fading into sterile stillness. Behind one set of doors, a mother and child fought for their lives. Behind another, a dog fought for his partner. And Daniel, caught between both, was left with only prayers, blood-stained hands, and the unshakable sense that this day would mark the beginning of something he wasn't ready to face. Hospitals have a strange way of warping time. Minutes stretch like hours. Hours vanish in a blink. For Daniel Hayes, sitting alone in a plastic chair with blood on his sleeves and a pit in his stomach, it felt like both at once. Bear was in surgery now, somewhere across the city under the care of a veterinary trauma team Daniel had never met, but desperately needed to believe in. Lauren Carter was also in surgery just down the hallway. The doctors had said she was stable for now, which felt like the kind of phrase people only use when they're trying not to say, "We don't know." Daniel was caught in between species, between outcomes, between regrets he couldn't shake, and prayers he wasn't sure how to say. His fingers rubbed at the side of his temple, the way they always did when he was trying to stay in control. He hated hospitals, the smell of antiseptic, the endless hum of machines, the silence between bad news and worse news. He hated it all because it reminded him of the last time. 3 years ago. Caleb. Back then, the hospital walls had held a different kind of fear. Caleb was only 10, skinny, pale, and hooked up to more wires than any kid should have ever seen. But he'd still smiled, still made jokes about Jell-O flavors, and nicknamed his four-pole Captain Dripalot. Bear had been there, too, smaller then, still limping from old injuries, but always by Caleb's side, like he understood exactly how fragile the boy was, and exactly how badly Daniel needed to believe they'd both be okay. That was the thing about Bear. He always knew. Daniel hadn't. He'd ignored the signs. He'd thought he was being rational. He'd thought the dog was just being clingy, maybe anxious from all the hospital visits. But Bear had sensed it far earlier than the oncologist, far earlier than the scan. The cancer had spread to Caleb's brain silently, quickly. There had been no second chance. Daniel had promised, sworn that Bear would never be neglected again. And now here they were on another tile floor, another long hallway, another fight for life. Ryan Carter returned, phone in hand. His dark suit was rumpled now, the neatness of money undone by the wear of worry. He sat beside Daniel, quiet for a moment. "I don't think I even said thank you," Ryan said finally. Daniel looked up. "You don't have to." "I do," Ryan said. "That dog, your partner." He didn't hesitate. "Didn't know my wife or our baby. Just moved, took the hit." Daniel nodded. "That's Bear. It's what he does. He's the reason I still have a wife," Ryan said. "And maybe a daughter." He hesitated, then added, "Her name's going to be Emma, after her grandmother." Daniel swallowed. "That's a good name." Ryan tapped his fingers against the chair's arm. "You ever think sometimes we meet the right souls at the wrong times?" Daniel didn't answer. He didn't have to. Ryan continued, voice quieter now. "Lauren, she's always been afraid of dogs, especially shepherds. Would cross the street to avoid them, said it came from something that happened a long time ago. I never pushed." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Still afraid of Bear?" Ryan shook his head. "Not anymore. Not after today. I think she saw something different." They sat in silence for a while after that. Just two men trying to hold their respective worlds together. A nurse appeared around the corner. Mid-30s, pink scrubs with cartoon ducks on them. "Mr. Hayes." Daniel stood so fast his chair tipped backward. "I have an update," she said. "Dr. Keller asked me to tell you. Bear made it through surgery." Daniel's knees nearly buckled. "He's stable," she continued. "Critical, but stable. We had to remove his spleen, repair a lacerated liver, and stop some heavy bleeding in the abdomen. He flatlined once on the table, but came back strong." The nurse gave a small smile. "Your dog's a fighter." Daniel pressed a hand to his chest like he was physically holding his heart in place. "Thank you," he managed. "God, thank you." "He's not out of the woods," she added. "But he's got a real shot." Ryan clapped a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Told you. You've got a miracle mud on your hands." Daniel nodded, blinking back tears. "He's more than a dog." By the time the nurse left, another hour had passed. The adrenaline was gone now, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion. Daniel leaned his head against the cold wall and let his eyes close for a second. That's when the memory came. Caleb's voice, thin, raspy, fading. "Promise me you'll take care of Bear." It had been one of the last clear things Caleb ever said. Just before the seizures started, before the morphine took over, before the monitors went flat, Daniel had promised, had sworn it. He'd nearly broken that promise today, not because he didn't care, but because life had bled him dry. The bank account, the credit cards, the late bills, the overtime that never seemed enough. He'd been prepared to watch Bear die on a hospital floor because he couldn't afford hope. And Bear had never once stopped trying to save others. Daniel ran a hand through his hair and exhaled slowly. No more broken promises. The doors to the operating wing burst open again. Dr. Patricia Summers stepped out. Late 40s, gray streak in her bun, eyes like steel that had seen too much. She looked at Ryan first. "Your wife is stable." Daniel felt the tension in Ryan's body dissolve like salt in water. "There were complications," Dr. Summers continued. "Placental abruption, severe internal bleeding. We had to do an emergency C-section." Ryan's face froze. "The baby?" "She's in the NICU," the doctor said. "Tiny, but breathing. The next 48 hours are critical, but she's got a fighting chance." Ryan covered his mouth, turning away, shoulders shaking. Dr. Summers looked at Daniel next. "Your dog saved both their lives." There were no visible signs of abruption until it was almost too late. But he sensed something. The way he pushed her forced the attention. "It gave us the minutes we needed." Daniel couldn't speak. He just nodded slowly. "Your partner," she said softly, "has instincts no machine could replicate." The nurse returned with a tablet in hand. "Dr. Keller thought you'd want to see this." She handed Daniel the screen. Bear lay on a recovery table, eyes barely open, but breathing steadily. Tubes, bandages, IVs, but alive. He looked tired. So tired. But when Daniel said his name aloud, Bear, the dog's ears flicked, just barely, and his tail moved a half-inch. Daniel laughed through the tears. "Damn Mutt, you're not allowed to go yet." Ryan was watching from the side, his voice quiet. He knew. Somehow he knew something was wrong with Lauren, even when she didn't. Daniel nodded. "He always knows." Ryan looked at him, a question forming behind his eyes. "There's more to your story, isn't there?" Daniel hesitated, then said simply, "Yeah, there's more, but not today." Ryan didn't press. Instead, he pointed to the tablet. "Tell him we'll be waiting when he's up for visitors." As Daniel walked out of the waiting area toward the veterinary transport, the sky outside had begun to shift into sunset. Arizona gold and dusty rose streaked the clouds like watercolor. He pulled out his phone, opened a video. Caleb and Bear tangled in Christmas lights. Laughter, barking, joy. "Rex says next Christmas will be amazing," Caleb grinned in the recording. "Dogs know things, remember." Daniel smiled through the ache. He hadn't had the heart to tell Caleb there wouldn't be a next Christmas. But maybe his son had known anyway. Maybe that was why Bear was still here fighting. Because Caleb had given him a job. And Bear had never quit a job in his life. The waiting room at Phoenix Veterinary Specialists had the kind of quiet that felt too heavy to be peaceful. It wasn't the silence of rest. It was the hush of held breath, of hope and fear, sitting shoulder to shoulder, both refusing to speak first. Daniel Hayes sat hunched forward, elbows on knees, his hands clasped so tight his knuckles looked bleached. He hadn't moved in over an hour. His back ached, his eyes burned. His phone buzzed occasionally in his pocket, well-meaning texts from friends or fellow officers, but he didn't check them. He just stared straight ahead through the bland walls and into a space only he could see. He wasn't really in that waiting room. He was 3 years back in another hospital, another set of sterile halls, another life. It had started a week before Caleb's final seizure. Bear had grown anxious, more intense than usual. He wasn't barking or acting out. Not yet. But he was alerting constantly. Every time Caleb sat down, Bear would press against him, nose at his neck, whining softly. At first, Daniel had chalked it up to the usual overprotective behavior Bear had shown since day one. He'd always been glued to Caleb's side, especially during treatment months. Caleb, for his part, loved it. "He's my dog therapist," he'd say, grinning weakly from his hospital bed. But that week, something changed. Bear wouldn't eat. He stopped responding to commands. He barely left Caleb's room. He paced, whimpered, even scratched at the bedroom door when Caleb was asleep. Like he couldn't bear the barrier. Daniel, overwhelmed with work and bills and the unrelenting grind of grief, didn't listen. He told himself Bear was just stressed. He told himself everything was fine. Then came the night it all fell apart. It was 2:15 a.m. when Bear lost it completely. Daniel, bone-tired from a 14-hour shift, had finally collapsed into bed. The bark that woke him was sharp, frantic, followed by paws hammering against Caleb's bedroom door. Then the scratching, then the howling. Daniel snapped. "Bear, enough." He stormed into the hallway and yanked the dog back by the collar. Not hard enough to hurt him, but enough to send a message. Bear stumbled slightly, his hind leg buckling the way it sometimes did when he was tired. "Let him sleep, damn it," Daniel growled. "He needs rest." But Bear didn't back off. Instead, he spun and gently but insistently grabbed Daniel's wrist in his mouth. Not biting, just pulling. That was the moment Daniel would remember for the rest of his life. The moment Bear tried to save them one final time, and Daniel shoved him away harder than he meant to. Bear hit the wall and crumpled, stunned. He didn't cry out, didn't even flinch, just got back up, limped to the bedroom door, and scratched again. Desperately. Daniel locked him in the laundry room. "You can come out when you learn to behave," he muttered, slamming the door. Then he put in earplugs, crawled into bed, and slept. 45 minutes later, the silence woke him. Not the kind of silence you fall asleep to, but the kind that screams. He stumbled from bed, confused at first, then noticed it. No scratching, no barking, no sound at all. He opened the laundry room. Bear bolted past him like a shot, skidding in the hallway as he scrambled toward Caleb's room. The door was already cracked open. Inside, Daniel found his son convulsing violently, rigid, frothing, unresponsive. He screamed. The 911 call was a blur. Bear howled, a guttural, haunted sound that tore through the walls. He threw himself against the side of the gurney as they wheeled Caleb out, his bad leg giving out mid-sprint, collapsing just outside the ambulance bay. They wouldn't let Bear ride with them. He chased the ambulance until his legs gave up entirely. A neighbor found him collapsed on Camelback Road 2 hours later, bloodied, paws raw. Caleb lasted 6 more days. 6 days of machines breathing for him, of sterile rooms filled with murmured prayers and unbearable stillness. Bear was allowed into the room once a day. Each time he would climb gently onto the bed, mindful of the wires, and lay across Caleb's chest, his head just over the boy's heartbeat. On the final morning, Caleb stirred through the haze of painkillers and whispered, "Where's Bear?" Daniel lifted the dog onto the bed one last time. Caleb stroked Bear's ears with shaking fingers. "Good boy," he murmured. "Tried to tell us, didn't you?" Bear whined, eyes locked on Caleb's face. "Take care of him," Caleb whispered. "Not his fault." Then he slipped back under and never woke up again. Daniel exhaled slowly in the vet's waiting room, heart clenched like a fist. He hadn't spoken to anyone about that night. Not really, not even Bear. After Caleb's funeral, Daniel had tried to give the dog away. 3 times, each time Bear had escaped. Once he'd broken through a screen window. Another time, he'd jumped from a moving truck bed. He'd limped across half the city to find Daniel's apartment, paws torn, nose bleeding. Daniel opened the door that final time and found Bear curled on the welcome mat. "We're stuck with each other, huh?" he whispered. 2 screw-ups trying to make it right. Bear just wagged his tail once, and they never spoke of it again. "Mr. Hayes?" Daniel looked up, startled. It was Dr. Keller, still in scrubs, hair pulled back, eyes kind but tired. "He's asking for you." Daniel blinked. "What?" "He's been vocalizing. Whining in a pattern, tail movement every time someone walks by." Heart rate spikes when he hears male footsteps. I think he knows you're nearby. Daniel stood slowly. Can I see him? Of course. But prepare yourself. He's stable but fragile. A long recovery ahead. She led him through the antiseptic bright halls, past kennels and surgical prep rooms into the recovery ward. Bear lay on a padded table surrounded by machines, monitors, and tubing. His eyes were open. Faded but alert. They locked on Daniel instantly. Daniel froze. For a moment, he saw Caleb again, saw Bear lying across his boy's chest, trying to absorb the pain, trying to stay when nobody else could. He stepped forward, knees weak. Hey, partner. Bear's tail wagged, slow but steady. Daniel reached out, hesitated, then finally pressed his hand to Bear's head. The dog leaned into it with a soft grunt. I'm sorry, Daniel whispered. About everything, about that night. I didn't trust you. Didn't listen, and you tried so damn hard. Bear licked his wrist. A sound escaped Daniel's throat, part laugh, part sob. You still love me, he said, after all that. Bear's eyes closed slowly, not from sleep, but from peace, forgiveness. Dr. Keller watched silently from the door. That bond, she said softly, it's something special. Daniel nodded, eyes still on Bear. He's not just a dog. He's what's left of my son. The vet left them alone. Daniel pulled up a chair and sat beside the recovery table, one hand resting on Bear's paw. He thought about all the people Bear had saved since that night. Passengers with diabetes, cancer, epilepsy, people who would have never known their lives were at risk if not for one limping shepherd with amber eyes. It had all been for Caleb. Daniel finally understood that. Now, Bear wasn't trying to erase the past. He was trying to honor it. Trying to turn their pain into something that mattered, something that saved lives. The sun was rising over Phoenix now. Golden light filtering through the window, casting a warm glow over Bear's fur. Daniel looked out at the desert skyline and thought about what Caleb had said just weeks before the end. Rex says, next Christmas will be amazing, Rex. That was what Caleb had called him sometimes, his superhero nickname for Bear. And maybe the kid had been right. Maybe this was that amazing Christmas, just a little late. Lauren Carter had never liked German shepherds. She didn't hate them exactly, but the sight of those upright ears, the deep amber eyes, the squared-off jaw, it triggered something old, something buried, something she couldn't explain to anyone without sounding irrational. Now, as she lay pale and exhausted in a recovery room at St. Mary's, Lauren thought about that moment when the dog lunged toward her in the airport security line. She'd been terrified, more afraid than when her water broke, more than when she saw blood on her hands. But that dog hadn't attacked her. He had saved her life and her daughter's. She woke sometime around 5 a.m., blur-eyed and disoriented, tubes in her arms, a dull ache in her abdomen, the beeping of machines measuring life in half-seconds. The door opened, and Ryan stepped in. His face was lined with worry, but he smiled when he saw her awake. Hey, he whispered, crossing the room. She blinked at him. Emma. He took her hand. She's here, in the NICU, breathing on her own. Lauren let out a shaky breath, tears sliding silently from her eyes. The dog? Ryan hesitated. Bear, he made it. Surgery was rough, but he pulled through. She closed her eyes, a mix of relief and guilt washing over her. I was so afraid of him. I thought he was attacking. You weren't the only one, Ryan said. But he knew. Somehow he knew what was happening inside you before anyone else did. Lauren shook her head slowly. No, not just today. I've been afraid for years, since, she trailed off, unable to say it. Ryan leaned forward. You don't have to explain. I do, she said, voice firmer now. I have to tell someone. I need to say it out loud. I think that dog helped me face something I've been hiding from. Ryan nodded, and she began. 15 years ago, Lauren had been married to a police officer, Brian Chen. He was tall, smart, had a laugh that filled every room, and he loved his canine partner, a German shepherd named Kaiser. Lauren hadn't been thrilled about the dog at first. Big, loud, too intense. But Brian had insisted Kaiser was gentle. He's just a teddy bear in a wolf's body, he'd say. She learned to trust the dog. Even grew to love him. Then came the raid. Bad intel. A drug bust gone sideways in Tempe. Children inside the house. No one knew about. Chaos. Gunfire. Kaiser went in after Brian. When the bullets stopped, both were gone. The official report said Kaiser had turned in the heat of battle, that he'd attacked his own handler. The department issued quiet apologies, but no public statement, and Brian's name disappeared from the headlines as quickly as it had arrived. Lauren lost her husband, and days later, the baby she was carrying. The trauma sent her into early labor. The baby didn't survive. No one ever told her the full story until now. There was a knock on the hospital room door. Ryan opened it, surprised to see a uniformed TSA officer standing there. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, impeccable posture. "Officer Hayes?" Ryan asked. The woman shook her head. "No, Officer Irwin." "Erica." Lauren froze. That name. Chen. Her voice caught. "Brian was your brother." Erica nodded slowly. "May I come in?" Lauren gestured weakly. "Please." Erica entered the room, suddenly looking a little less like a federal agent and a little more like a woman carrying years of grief. "I've been watching you all day," she said. "I was there when Bear alerted. I should have said something earlier, but I wasn't ready." Lauren sat up a little. "Why now?" "Because Bear reminded me of Kaiser," Erica said. "The way he reacted, the urgency, the focus, it was like watching a ghost. And I couldn't walk away from it again." She took a deep breath. "The report was wrong, Lauren. Kaiser didn't turn on Brian. He died protecting him. He shielded your husband from 2 shooters. Took 3 bullets before we could get to them." Lauren's face crumpled. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "I was just a rookie," Erica said. "They told me to stay quiet, that the public wouldn't understand. They needed someone to blame." Lauren's chest shook with sobs. "All these years, I've hated that dog. I've hated all of them." Erica's eyes shone with unshed tears. "I know, and I'm sorry. I've carried that guilt for 15 years." There was a long silence between them. Then Lauren whispered, "Why were you at the airport today?" "I saw the K9 alert come through," Erica said. "And when I saw your name, I knew I had to be there. Something told me this wasn't a coincidence." Ryan spoke up, his voice low. "Bear saved both of them. And now maybe he's saving you, too." Lauren looked over at him, a tear-streaked smile forming. "I think he already did." She turned back to Erica. "What was Kaiser really like?" Erica smiled, the first real one since she entered. "He loved butterflies, would chase them for hours, but never hurt them. Let toddlers crawl all over him. Slept curled against Brian's back like a second shadow." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, weathered photo. "I've carried this since the funeral. I think it belongs with you now." Lauren took it with trembling fingers. Brian in full uniform, beaming, his hand resting on Kaiser's head. In the other hand, a blurry black and white ultrasound photo. She gasped. "That was the day he came from your first appointment," Erica said softly. "He was showing everyone. Said Kaiser was already practicing to be a big brother." Lauren sobbed openly, holding the photo to her chest. Later that evening, a nurse entered with a tablet. "It's from the vet hospital. Thought you'd want to see." The screen showed Bear, still intubated, but awake. His tail thumped softly against the bed when someone spoke off camera. Lauren reached out to touch the screen. "I was so afraid of you," she whispered. "But you weren't trying to hurt me. You were trying to save me." Ryan watched, hand on her shoulder. "And you let him?" Lauren nodded. "I want our daughter to meet him when we're both stronger." Ryan smiled. "We'll make it happen." Lauren turned to Erica. "Tell me everything. I want Emma to know the real story about Kaiser. About Brian, about the dog who gave everything to protect us." Erica's voice broke. "Thank you for wanting to know." Lauren squeezed her hand. "It's time. It's past time." That night, as Lauren drifted off to sleep, the photo lay beside her bed. A candle flickered on the windowsill. Somewhere across the city, Bear was healing, slowly, stubbornly, like always, and for the first time in 15 years, Lauren Carter dreamed not of fear, but of forgiveness. The envelope showed up the next morning, tucked under the door of Daniel's hospital room like a ghost delivering mail. No name, no postage, just his name in a handwriting that hit him like a punch to the chest. Linda, his ex-wife. Daniel stared at it for a long time before picking it up. His fingers shook as he broke the seal. Not sure what he expected. A note, a memory, more blame. But what fell into his lap made the air leave his lungs. A smaller envelope inside, sealed with a faded dinosaur sticker and scrawled across the front in uneven, determined kid handwriting, "For Dad. Give to him when Bear does something really amazing." Daniel pressed the envelope to his chest, the breath caught somewhere between a sob and a prayer. He opened Linda's note first. "Daniel, I heard what happened at the airport, about Bear, about the woman and the baby. I should have given this to you years ago. I found it the day after the funeral, but I was angry at you, at God, at Bear, but mostly at myself for not being able to protect him. I think Bear saving that family is Caleb's way of telling me it's time to let go. I hope you're ready to read it because I wasn't. Linda." Daniel wiped his eyes and slowly opened the second letter. The one from Caleb, his son's handwriting, slanted, misspelled, full of life. "Dear Dad, Mom says I should write letters for important things in case I'm not around. So, I'm writing this one for when Bear does something really amazing. I know you don't believe me when I say Bear talks to me. Not like people talk, but he does, with his ears and his eyes and that big sigh he does when he knows something you don't. I want to tell you a secret. It's kind of a big one. Remember when I had that extra checkup with Dr. Morrison? The one you couldn't go to? Mom took me, but we made another stop first. We saw a scientist who does DNA tests. Don't be mad. Mom just wanted to know something. Dad, I found out you're not my real dad. Like, not biologically. Dr. Morrison's friend said I was named after your brother. That you married Mom after he died and you raised me anyway. But here's the thing. I don't care, because you chose me. And that's even better than blood. Bear knew, you know. The day we brought him home, he sniffed me for a long time. Then he sniffed you. Then he tilted his head like he was thinking. And then he decided it didn't matter. So I decided that too. Dad, I know I'm sick. I don't like the medicine. It makes me feel fuzzy and sad. But Bear kept trying to help. Even when I begged him to stop. Even when I hid my pills and he tried to tell you, he never gave up on me. And neither did you. So when Bear saves someone else, and I know he will, I want you to remember, every time he does, it's like a little piece of me is still here. Still helping. Take care of Bear and let him take care of you, too. Love you to the moon and back. Caleb. P.S. Tell Bear he's the best boy. He already knows, but he likes hearing it anyway. Daniel sat there for a long time, the letter clutched in both hands, tears running freely. He didn't care who saw, didn't care that the nurse standing outside the door quietly backed away to give him space. He just whispered, "I love you too, kiddo," and kissed the top of the paper like it was his son's forehead. Then he got up. Bear was in recovery, hooked to monitors, wrapped in clean bandages, but alert. His tail thumped the second Daniel entered the room. Daniel laughed softly. "You knew, didn't you?" he said. "You knew he wasn't mine. But he was still ours." He sat next to the recovery bed and held Bear's paw. "I read the letter," he said. "He forgave me for not seeing it sooner, for not listening." Bear made a soft sound in his throat, almost a hum. Daniel stroked his head. He said, "Every person you save is like a little piece of him still helping." The dog's tail beat harder. "You've got a lot of people to save, partner," Daniel said. "So rest up, because we're not done." That afternoon, Lauren and Ryan Carter arrived. She was in a wheelchair, pale but glowing. Emma was still in the NICU, but the doctor said she was strong. "I had to see him," Lauren said, voice cracking. Daniel helped pull her closer to Bear. The shepherd sniffed, eyes half-lidded, then lifted his head just enough to press his nose into her palm. She cried. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing what no one else saw. For saving us." Daniel smiled. "You weren't the first, and you won't be the last." Lauren looked at him. "Can I tell you something?" He nodded. She glanced at Ryan, who squeezed her hand, then said, "Dr. Morrison is my cousin." Daniel blinked. "Dr. Patricia Morrison. She told me about a case years ago, a boy named Caleb and a dog that tried to alert his family before brain cancer spread. She said the father never forgave himself for not listening to the dog." Daniel froze. "She told that story at a conference once, it stuck with me. And when Ryan told me about Bear, I put it together." She looked into his eyes. "You're Caleb's dad." Daniel's throat clenched. "Yes," he whispered. Lauren's voice softened. She said, "Even if you'd brought Caleb in sooner, the outcome wouldn't have changed." She ran the scans herself. "That kind of metastasis, it happens fast. You couldn't have stopped it." Daniel blinked fast, tears threatening again. "But Bear tried." She said that's what mattered. That Bear fought. That you fought. That Caleb never died alone. Bear stirred then, sensing the emotions in the room. His eyes shifted from Lauren to Daniel, tail twitching. Daniel smiled and pulled the letter from his pocket. "I think you should read this," he said. Lauren took it, carefully unfolding the note. As she read, her shoulders began to shake. By the time she reached the end, she was openly weeping. "To the moon and back," she whispered. "That's what my grandmother used to say to me." Bear reached out and laid his paw gently on her knee, just like he had with Emma on the ultrasound table. Lauren laughed through her tears. "He knows," she whispered. "Of course he does," Ryan stepped forward. "There's something else. I looked up your brother, Tommy Martinez. Silver Star, Purple Heart, saved 6 men before he went down in Afghanistan." Daniel nodded. "He was the hero. I was just the backup plan." Ryan shook his head. "You were the father Caleb needed. That makes you a hero, too." Daniel looked down at Bear. "He made me one. Whether I wanted to be or not." The nurse returned with more updates. Bear's vitals were improving faster than expected. His appetite was coming back. He might be cleared for light walking in a few days. "He won't rest," she said, smiling, "until he knows everyone's okay." Lauren looked at Daniel. "When we're better, I want Emma to meet him. I want her to grow up knowing that the thing I feared most is the reason she's alive. Daniel nodded. She'll meet him, and he'll love her. Lauren touched Bear's head one last time. I already do. That night, Daniel sat next to Bear with Caleb's letter tucked in his jacket. He played the old Christmas video on his phone. Caleb and Bear wrestling over a popcorn garland, laughing like the world couldn't touch them. At the end, Caleb looked into the camera. Hey, Dad, he grinned. Next Christmas is going to be amazing. Daniel smiled, wiping his face. You were right, kiddo, he whispered. It is. 1 year later, Daniel Hayes's backyard didn't look like a place where grief had once lived. It looked like joy. Pink and white balloons swayed in the Arizona breeze. Folding chairs and picnic tables dotted the grass beneath a wide patch of shade cast by the same 2 mesquite trees where Caleb had once played with Bear. A banner stretched between them, big and bold, "Happy First Birthday, Emma." Children ran laughing across the lawn. Adults nursed sweet tea and lemonade, and the smell of grilled hot dogs mingled with fresh-cut grass. It was the kind of day you wanted to freeze and bottle, the kind you never forget. And in the center of it all, on his favorite sun-warmed patch of earth, lay Bear, a ridiculous paper party hat sat slightly askew on his graying head. His gait was slower these days, and his limp more pronounced, but those amber eyes were still sharp, still kind, still watching everything. Emma Carter, 1 year old and full of opinions, crawled straight to him in her little white dress. She plopped down next to the big shepherd and babbled a stream of toddler nonsense while patting his fur like she was giving him instructions. "Gentle, Emma," Lauren called from across the yard. But it wasn't necessary. Bear, as always, was ready. He turned his big head and gently licked her chubby cheek, drawing a squeal of delight. "She's not afraid of him at all," Ryan said, flipping hot dogs on the grill. Daniel smiled, watching the girl nestle into Bear's side like it was her favorite pillow. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. They know family when they see it. A moment later, a familiar voice called out from the gate. "Delivery of emergency dessert reinforcements." Officer Erica Irwin strolled in, carrying 2 gallons of ice cream under each arm and wearing aviators over her eyes. The once reserved TSA agent was now a regular at these backyard gatherings, her former emotional armor replaced with something warmer, something earned. "We got chocolate chip cookie dough, mint chocolate chip, and something called unicorn swirl that I was afraid to read the ingredients on." "Unicorn swirl?" Daniel raised a brow. Erica grinned. "Don't ask. It sparkles. That's all I know." Lauren laughed and pointed toward the cooler. "Load them up before they melt." Later that afternoon, while kids chased bubbles and the adults relaxed under string lights, Lauren stood and tapped a spoon against her glass. "Hey, everyone," she said. "Ryan and I wanted to say a few words and share a little news." The crowd quieted, turning toward her. Lauren took a deep breath. "1 year ago, many of you were in a hospital with us. We almost lost everything. If it weren't for a certain stubborn dog," she looked toward Bear, who perked up at the sound of her voice, "and the incredible people who believed in him, Emma wouldn't be here." The group nodded solemnly. A few sniffles, a few tears. Lauren smiled. "But today, we celebrate. Not just because she made it, but because we all did." Ryan joined her at the front, placing a hand on her back, and he added, "We figured it was time for another announcement." Lauren held up a sonogram photo, twin heartbeats glowing on the screen. "We're expecting again," she said. "Twin boys, due this fall." The backyard exploded in cheers. "Names?" someone shouted. Lauren's eyes met Daniel's across the lawn. "We've chosen to name them Thomas and Brian," she said. "For the heroes who couldn't be here, but who are always with us." Daniel looked down at Bear. The dog didn't move, just wagged his tail once, strong and sure. As the party wound down, Daniel stayed behind to clean up. Lauren and Ryan had taken Emma home for her nap. The others had said their goodbyes. The sky was turning a soft rose gold as the sun sank behind the desert horizon. Bear lay beside him near the fire pit, head resting on his paws. Daniel sank into a lawn chair and took a slow sip from his lemonade. "You did good, partner." Bear let out a soft hum. It wasn't a growl. Wasn't a whine. It was that same melodic sound he used to make in Caleb's hospital room. Part lullaby, part prayer. Daniel chuckled. "Still singing that song, huh?" He reached into the side pocket of the cooler and pulled out a sealed envelope, the same one Caleb had written a year before, now kept safely in a Ziploc bag. Daniel opened it again, even though he knew every word by heart. "Every time Bear saves someone, it's like a little piece of me is still helping." And he had saved people, not just Lauren and Emma, but a woman at the park whose diabetes almost went undetected, a boy at a school demo who hadn't known his seizures were caused by a tumor, even a fellow TSA officer who discovered a mole, later diagnosed as early-stage melanoma, because Bear refused to let her pass through the checkpoint. All those lives, all those second chances, Caleb's legacy, Bear's purpose, Daniel's healing. Erica walked back into the yard as Daniel folded the letter away. "I figured you'd still be out here," she said, handing him a slice of leftover cake. "Figured right," he said, patting the chair next to him. She sat, looked out across the lawn, then said, "I keep thinking about something your son wrote. About how love isn't about blood. It's about choosing someone." Daniel nodded slowly. "Bear chose us," he said. "Over and over again, even when we didn't deserve it." She looked down at the old shepherd, now sleeping peacefully, his chest rising and falling in rhythm with the desert breeze. "Sometimes I think the world would be better if we listened to dogs more than people." Daniel grinned. "I stopped arguing with Bear a long time ago." The sky went full indigo. Stars began to peek out one by one. Somewhere in the distance, a baby named Emma was dreaming of balloons and bubbles. Somewhere inside Lauren's belly, two little boys named after heroes were growing strong. And here, in the backyard, where joy had returned, a man and a dog sat quietly together, sharing the kind of silence that only comes from years of battle, loss, and unconditional love. Daniel leaned over and whispered, "You were right, kiddo." Bear's tail thumped once. "You're the best boy. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey." This story of Daniel, Caleb, Bear, Lauren, and Emma is a tribute to love that transcends species, to the power of second chances, and to the courage of the animals who show up for us, especially when we don't even know we need them. If you've made it this far, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever known an animal who changed your life? Who showed up during your darkest hour? Who seemed to understand you in a way no human could? Drop your story in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this story touched you, inspired you, or reminded you of someone you've loved, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories about the four-legged angels walking among us. Because sometimes, as Caleb once said, dogs know.